What's up, Internet? This is the A4th Wolf, and welcome back to another episode of Wolf Watches. Today, I will be breaking down Volume 6, Episode 7 of RWBY, the Grimm Reaper. I'll be perfectly honest, when this episode came out, I was so excited that I watched it before putting up my last video, and subsequently accidentally titled my last breakdown video The Grimm Reaper until I realized my mistake. But it was just that I was so excited with this that I wanted to pretty much break down everything I knew about it, so it just jumped in my head that for some reason the episode that I was putting up was the Grimm Reaper. Anyway, point is, this was a really good episode. With this kind of dry spell that I've been having between episodes 4 and 5, these last two episodes have really been positive in a number of reasons, not to mention the fact that now the plot seems to finally start going. And there's only 14 episodes, so we just hit the halfway point. So I hope that the story kind of picks up a little bit and we get into a little bit more action. And I'm really interested in what the finale will be. Will it be them arriving in Atlas? Will it be some kind of development in Atlas? Or will Cinder or Salem's team get to Atlas and start fighting RWBY? And it just occurred to me that you're probably wondering what this is. I gave plasma today, so that's why I got this minor note. So anyway, let's go ahead and jump right into the episode. The episode actually opens in the spring vault. Cinder has just finished telling Neo kind of who she serves, what their goals are, and stuff like that. By the way the conversation is played out, Cinder pretty much hasn't held back. She told Neo pretty much everything that involves the Maidens, the relics, and more. While she's explaining it, Cinder also tells Neo that Salem has kind of forbidden her or just discouraged her from taking direct action against RWBY, but if she teamed up with Neo, Neo doesn't have that restraint because she doesn't know Salem, so she can kill RWBY, thus achieving both of their goals. Neo seals the deal with Cinder, so now these two are finally on their way to try to track down RWBY. Now we switch over to another location, and it's just this really long bridge, and there's a figure walking across it. We have no idea who this person is, where this is, or when this is, until the weapon reveal, which the whole situation turns out to be Maria back in the past in her younger huntress days. And she reveals it because there's a gigantic Nevermore that's swoops down at her, and it looks bigger than the Nevermore that RWBY and her friends took care of it back in Volume 1. And I really like Maria's design. She literally looks like a Grimm Reaper with like a Day of the Dead mask, and her weapon are these two small scythes, and each one has this device on it that can attract, that she can use to drag to her or have the two weapons dragged together. So she kind of uses this to fly up to the Nevermore, or she throws it against a mountain so the Nevermore smashes into it, and she finally manages to ground it. As a side note, this kind of reminds me of the fan trailer Viridian by Mark Zhang, and I'm wondering if that wasn't an inspiration or it was just coincidence. But if you haven't checked it out, I have a link to description below. So after she brings down the Nevermore kind of surprises her by playing dead for a second, and then leaps up and smacks the weapons out of her hands. It's at this point that Maria looks at it and this blinding silver light comes out. So she has the silver eyes, she knows how to use them, but what I really like is that she doesn't use them all the time, she uses it as a last resort. So the Nevermore is petrified, falls out of the sky, just shatters into a bunch of pieces, but then Maria is ambushed by these bandits or mercenaries or something along those lines. The leader apparently is a follower of Salem, and she's a fauness, and she has a very interesting design and accent. People have been saying that she resembles the Mad Hatter, and I can definitely see that, especially with the gigantic clock that she keeps at her waist. This clock that she carries, it seems to work a little bit the same way as Velvet, like it's a part of her. Either it works in conjunction with her semblance or just something that allows her to use it. I'm not quite sure how the semblance stuff, like whether or not some equipment needs to be made in order to optimize each semblance fully, but that's how I see it. So the leader says, you must be the Grimm Reaper, and this will be the last 60 seconds of your life. And I just want to point out real quick the irony of the name Grimm Reaper, because we have it as like, the bringer of death and stuff like that, and kind of an evil force. But in the world of RWBY, yeah, it's a bringer of death. But this one, it's almost like a hero name. It's just kind of interesting how the mirror of definition kind of like flips around in this case. So they get into the battle, and the Faunus sets the timer on her clock, and her aura immediately pops up as soon as she presses the button. So I'm still not sure whether or not this is her semblance and it's working in conjunction with that, or maybe the item itself has the ability to give a semblance, maybe? I still have a lot of questions about that, but I think I want to discover that's a thing that maybe Atlas has been developing. In terms of the semblance, and when she clicks it and her aura goes up, the entire ability seems to be greater defense, greater speed, possibly greater strength. I say the defense because at one point, it's a little hard to tell whether it gets shot out of her hand or the aura deflects it, but Maria tries to hit the Faunus with her scythe. She seems to react to it, but then the scythe kind of like flies to the side, so she has to use the one remaining one. But despite that, Maria is freaking awesome. She manages to fly around using the magnetic stuff. She does a bunch of flips. She deflects all this stuff, and then it's 4-1. So she is holding her own very well, and she lives up to the name of the Grimm Reaper. So she takes out the 3 weaker enemies and then tries to go toe-to-toe with the Faunus one. And at this point, she has managed to put her weapon in its 3rd configuration. There's the pistol, there's the 2 scythes, and then she puts them together in just a staff with 2 blades at the end. And it's just really cool. She uses it so well, and it's just so pretty to look at. So they're going head-to-head, but the Faunus actually bites through the staff of the weapon, headbutts her to destroy the mask, and then just slices and just takes out her eyes. So when Maria falls over, just injured and just screaming, the clock on the Faunus bells ring, and it turns out that this is the time limit. It's literally been about 60 seconds, and the entire fight takes about 60 seconds minus like another second due to slow motion, which I think was really cool. So she clicks it off, and whether that is what controls her aura or not, or she just doesn't feel threatened anymore, the aura drops as soon as she clicks it off. So right before the Faunus makes the finishing blow, Maria actually tricks her, because like one scythe was over here and the other scythe was with her. She managed to pull the scythe over here that jams into the Faunus's back, and then she just does a blind swipe to behead the Faunus. We don't see the beheading, but it's implied. So then it cuts back to the present, where Maria's kind of wrapping up the story, and Crow is like starstruck. He admits that the Grimm Reaper was kind of his role model. He based his weapon off her. He always wanted to be like her. Maria says that she grew up to be a disappointment, so Crow is well on his way, which is mean, but not too inaccurate based on what Crow has been doing these last couple episodes. Maria says she sees herself as a disappointment because being a huntress is protecting people until the bitter end. And as soon as she lost her eyes, she was too afraid to go fight in fear of more people chasing her down and finishing the fight that the Faunus started. And she knows that somebody else is behind all that, because the Faunus basically told her her master was going after her because of her silver eyes. So she was afraid that despite losing her silver eyes, that she would still, because she's still a threat. So she had went into hiding, but now that she has kind of come out of, well, not come out of hiding, but revealed herself to RWBY and her friends, she feels more responsible and a little bit more ashamed of herself for the actions that she took. However, at the same time, she acknowledges their strength. She's very impressed with how the students turned out, and she says that it's comforting that the next generation seems like it can take care of itself, and she apologizes for not basically helping them pick it up a little bit better than she left it off. And I like the wording on this, because back in the apathy chapter, like one of the big things that especially Yang said we can ditch the relic. It won't be our problem because by the time Salem finds it, we'll all be dead. I think that kind of reflects that conversation because yes, they were affected by apathy, but Yang and the rest were just like, let's not make it our problem. Let the next life take care of this thing. And I think that just kind of rolls around to the whole Ozpin thing. Like, he did the best he could to try to make things easier for the next generation by setting up the schools, by training huntsmen and huntresses. And I think that might come into play later. By the way, this whole conversation with Oz and stuff like that, I'm still on the fence of how I feel about him. I'm just saying that this is where I think the writing is going in terms of how essentially they would move on from Oz's mistakes. Maybe not forgive him, say, okay, we realize what you did was wrong, we can sympathize a little bit, we're gonna try and help you anyway, like that kind of thing. So RWBY basically says, well, you're ashamed that you say you abandoned us, why don't you try to make up for it, teach me how to use my silver eyes. Before Maria can give an answer, Ruby's phone starts to ring, and she picks it up, and it's John. And he said he's been trying to call ever since they made it to Argus. Minor note, it is so funny because she picks up the phone and we see the caller ID, and it says Vomit Boy. So I think it's funny how she kept the name. It must be going on like a year and a half, almost 2 years at this point, and she still has his caller ID as Vomit Boy. I just think it's just one of those pure things that RWBY does. It's like, by that time I probably would have changed a name like that, but she just keeps it because it brings a smile to her face and remembers that first day of Beacon. So when RWBY picks up the phone and they look up, and at the top of the hill, they reach the top of the hill and you can see Argus in the distance. And I mean, it looks pretty, and it's just so nice to get out of the goddamn snow, out of the woods and stuff, and see some civilization. So the group gets to the walls. Yang stores Bumblebee for some future use, hopefully. I hope it doesn't stay there forever. And the rest of Juniper reunites with RWBY outside the walls. And it's a touching scene. Everyone, gives hugs and says, we're worried about you. Is everything okay? I just love the friendship. And there might be even a little bit of Lancaster shipping in it, if you want to take it that way. I've always said that Lancaster is like one of my least popular ships, not because I can't see it happening, it's just that I never really saw the two that way. But this one, it's definitely like, they gave each other a hug, and RWBY says, hey, don't be sad, I promise I'd be here. And it's just, they're definitely very, very good friends, and I can see a relationship forming. So they travel through Argus, and I love the city. This is definitely one of the more uniquely designed places they've been in that we were allowed to see. Mistral was great from a distance, but once we actually got to Mistral, after like the first episode, we didn't see a lot of it. It was mainly just the house that RWBY stayed in, and then the slums where Crow went to search for huntsmen and huntresses, and like a couple other places, but we never saw any bustling or not a lot of buildings or anything like that. Argus, on the other hand, is beautiful. I don't really know how to explain it, but it's just very detailed. It's actually got places where you could see people went to hang out, like the movie theater, which was one of my favorite places. And it looks like a mix of San Francisco meets with like 101 Dalmatians. I think that was in London. I don't remember the park name, but it kind of reminds it, like the buildings remind me of that setup. There's trolleys, there's hover carts for construction. You see people walking around, you see people traveling from place to place. And like I said, there's the movie theater, and it gets me a kick out of it. I just like to see places. It makes the world feel more alive. And I went to see if there were any like Easter eggs and stuff like that. And the movies that were playing were Demon of the Deep, which maybe looks like a Jaws reference. There's Trust in the Mist, and you can see the city of Mistral in the background, and it looks like some kind of romance between, two people, some generic fantasy or romance or something like that. There's a movie for the fall of Beacon, which I thought was a little callous. It's been like a year and a half, guys, and it really took you that long to make a movie on it. And then there was a coming soon that's kind of like partially obscured by a tree. But to me, it looks like an Avengers-inspired poster. I don't know whether it was or not, but it looked pretty good. I wanted to see it. So as they're traveling on the trolley, Ren mentions that Argus is one of the largest cities to be founded outside of the kingdom, and this is because when Mistral got there, they tried to help out, or they tried to build it up, but they weren't having a lot of luck. But then people from Atlas came and they helped them brave the cold, set up defenses, and provide a military presence to help them set up a trading route. So Team RWBY's like, well, where have you guys been staying? And we run into Jean's oldest sister, Saffron. I've been looking forward to seeing the Jean family. We only get the one, but I mean, she looks great, and the interaction that the whole time between Jean and his big sister is just typical, and they obviously love each other very much. She loves to tease the hell out of Jean, and Jean is just like, yeah, I'm taller than you now, but I am still the baby of the family. And he is very bitter about that. So Saffron lives with her wife, Terracotta, and that's spelled Terra and Cotta, so two different words according to the subtitles. And I especially love that scene where we find out that she has a wife, because I've been thinking about it, this is our first confirmed LGBT couple. There's been some gay characters, and there's been like a background couple supposedly in Volume 5 in Mistral. There's like a still scene of two men that look to be a couple. But this is the first one that's like set in stone, this is a couple. And it's great. We just don't get a lot of the same-sex couples in media. And this is just really nice to see. And the two of them even adopted a child together, so you know that they are very, very happy with each other. And I don't know, I mean, I have a lot of gay friends, and this was just like, I was really happy to see this. And I was talking to my friends about it, and they agree that this is kind of a big deal, because it was sort of like saying, hey, this is a gay couple, they have different ideas than most people do, but they have a very stable relationship, they have a child, both have, steady jobs, and they're both just very happy and have a devoted family life, and they're very friendly, and giving Team RWBY and Juniper just a place to stay. That might not sound like a lot, but in kind of this climate of just fear of being different or having just different opinions, this was very, very refreshing for me to watch. So Terracotta and Saffron basically are just making conversation. And it really hits me that this is the first time that they are lying to people that they know about why they're there. And Crow just kind of explains it as an extended training mission, which isn't a bad cover story, but at the same time there's, like 8 of them and an old lady. It's a little shaky, and even Maria kind of like shakes her head like, this is a terrible, like you're terrible like trying to cover this up. And another minor note, with the interaction between Maria and Crow's like fascination with the Grimm Reaper as a role model and stuff like that, I kind of wonder if there's going to be some friction or some change or some inspiration about that. Like Maria has had a few days to get used to Crow, and Crow has not been a great role model, so I don't see her being very impressed with him as if yet. I know it's not completely his fault, she has only seen him in the worst possible way, but sometimes you only know about a person if you've seen them at their lowest. So I kind of wonder if Crow is going to take any advice that Maria may give him, or Maria may kind of say, you're kind of useless, I don't see you being a good teacher for these kids, or anything like that. And again, it's probably not going to happen, but it would be very interesting, in my opinion, it would be very interesting to see that interaction. So while they're setting up a meal, Terracotta gets a call on her scroll, so she steps out to take it. Everyone else is just kind of like, is everything okay? Saffron then explains that Terracotta is a technician at the communications tower in Argus, and that happens to be the same location where the Atlas military base has a radar, and it's been kind of on the fritz lately, as she puts it. And it sounds like Atlas is blaming the town of Argus and Mistral citizens of tampering with it. And this is pretty bad because, I mean, we already know that Ironwood wants to close borders, but now the implication is that he's blaming, or just the higher-ups are blaming Mistral citizens for tampering with their equipment, and that will just further cement their need to kind of just block off and like exclude anyone that's not part of Atlas. So then the conversation switches to, well, how are you going to get to, well, like, what's your plan for getting to Atlas? And RWBY says, well, we can try the military base, see if we can get any help from there. Jean says that they tried going to the military base, but they didn't have much luck. And Team RWBY's like, I mean, how hard can it be? Was it really, I mean, is it really that bad? And then the final shot is them standing outside of, I guess, the Atlas part of the military base, which is on a small island that's a little bit into the harbor, and without warning, the gates just close in front of them and lock them out. So, yeah, that's an issue. That's where the episode ends. I just wonder how they're gonna get through. The only thing I can think of is Weiss kind of like tries to pull her rank. I don't know how many people know that she's out of Atlas and whether or not Jacques is kind of covering up the fact that she escaped. Or, Atlas will just kind of say, I don't believe you guys. No way that this is the Schnee heiress. Or maybe they'll just even go the whole 9 yards and say she's no longer the heiress. She doesn't have any control over us. Jacques has forbidden any of us from taking orders from her. Not that they would probably take orders from her anyway, even if she was still the heiress, but there would be less pressure in basically allowing her to have any pull over anyone that may still be in Argus. It would be interesting though if maybe Winter was like somehow in charge of that of the facility. I think that'd be kind of cool if we got to saw her again. So apart from that, I think I said everything that I've wanted to say. Pretty much like my big things are the LBGT couple, which is great. I love the the city of Argus. In terms of getting through, the only thing I can think of if like those other like just using Weiss's reputation to get in, or maybe Terracotta will somehow help them get in. I guess it would just take an airship or a boat. But this could be an opportunity to see how Atlas treats the Mistral citizens, whether or not fairly or unfairly, due to the paranoia that surrounds Atlas now. And then there's the whole Cinder and Neo is chasing down RWBY. I assume Hazel is also chasing her down. It's going to be an interesting couple of episodes, I think. So I hope that they keep the feeling that the city is occupied, because Rooster Teeth has kind of a bad habit of abandoning streets when it's convenient. We saw that in Vale a lot. We saw that in the Mistral slums area with when Cinder was looking for information, and then the fight with Neo. So I hope they try to keep that feeling, because it sounds like a bustling town, and just clearing it out for a fight scene or because the characters need to be sneaky is just a little lazy. So I want to see more of the city. And then apart from that, I want to see some interaction between Maria and Crow. Like, I think it could benefit some character development for Crow. So that pretty much wraps up the episode for this week. Really enjoyed it. Can't wait for the next one. So until then, this is the 84th Wolf, and I'll see you guys next time.